Father, we thank you so much for your grace, mercy, and your love. We thank you for those that are here now and those that are intended to come. And most all, we thank you for our guest presenter. Lord, we just pray that all will understand, get from this lecture that which is needed, and we'll be careful to give you the praise, honor, and the glory. Lord, you told us in your word that these bodies are not our own, they're bought with a price, and we should glorify you in our bodies. You have a lot to say about our bodies and how we take care of them. So we want to hear tonight a wonderful presentation on an interesting topic, probably new for many. Thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Man,
Hey, Anika, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I am blessed and I'm highly favored. Glad to have you here tonight. And guys, we're going to go ahead and get started with our presentation. I just wanted to let you all know that I met Dr. Meyer, uh, I guess a couple weeks ago at LifeMed, which is a clinic in the Chattanooga area. He was talking about exercise. And Anita, who is my event coordinator, decided we needed to go listen to that presentation. We listened, and he presented an interesting topic. I made an attempt to do the calculations based upon what he will present tonight. And then we went to his lab, performance lab, yesterday and validated my calculations. They were a little bit off, but as he explained, I was doing calculations and he was actually recording performance. So that would account for the difference. But we will go ahead and allow Dr. Meyer to present now. And if you have questions, you can certainly post them in the chat. Dr. Meyer, if there are questions that pop up, how would you like for us to handle it? Do you mind being interrupted with questions?
and you can interrupt me at any time.
Okay,
I have
okay.
no
So,
problem with them.
so this group, as I look at it, most of them are not very shy. There might be some that will pretend to be shy. See, she's smiling right now. She'll pretend to be shy, but she's not really shy. So,
Uh,
as y'all feel the need, jump in and ask a question, and we'll roll on from there. Thanks a lot. And the next voice that you will hear will be that of Dr. Harold Meyer.
Thank you, Ben. Glad to be here. And my wife can never figure out why I can go to Tractor Supply and come home with someone that's interested in wanting to be tested in the lab. Well, because I can't stop talking about the importance of activity. Um, Activity is life, inactivity is
Death.
death, and it works. You haven't seen any dead people walking around or being active lately, have you? Well, when you're dead, you're dead. Because, boy, you need to be active to stay alive and to be healthy. So, I'm going to particularly zero in on using exercise as medicine. But the problem is when you use exercise as medicine, we tend to think, well, maybe it's not so good because some medicine is not so good for us. It's got a lot of side effects. And exercise can have side effects if it's incorrectly approached. So I'm going to tell you the approaches you need. I'm going to share my screen so that you can see the handout that'll be available to you. Um, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about here. Okay, so what's really important here is that um, exercise is taken in a dose, what we call time release dose. In fact, physical activity of itself, when you're doing it, whether you're doing it correctly or not, has some effect on you. And we want it to have the best effect because 75% of all the calories that are burned in metabolism in your body 24/7, we have metabolism that's 24/7, and 75% of those calories are burned at rest, not during exercise. In fact, very little of the metabolism happens during exercise compared to what all happens at rest. So we want a very efficient resting picture. And that's what we did with Ben and Anita. They came to the lab and we laid them down, and we checked out their resting metabolism because we wanted to know exactly where their body was 75% of the time, where it was most of the time. And that way we could predict and show exactly from their breathing in the analyzer. We had a mask on them. We showed them exactly that what they were breathing was a certain percentage of carbohydrate burning and a certain percentage of fat burning. And most people, can burn about 50-50, where they're burning fat and carbs. But we don't want to burn carbs too fast because that's the spark of the system. That's what ignites the fat to burn. And we want the fat burning to happen there. You can see I have right there slow twitch fibers. See that where it says slow twitch fibers there? That's important because slow twitch fibers are what burn in the mitochondria. Remember when we were in 8th grade and in biology, we talked about the powerhouse of the cell. Well, your cells have mitochondria in it. And that's the essence of exercise done through what we call metabolic efficient exercise. So it's counterculture what people believe. In fact, I have a home assignment for you when you get home sometime. You can watch what the real goal of exercise is from a coach who coached people, a girls' team, a cross-country running team, and she always wanted to slow them down to make sure that they were building mitochondria. And everybody was upset at her because the coach wasn't pushing them. And that's the way of most thinking of exercise. Remember, I have here in my logo, it's smarter, it's not harder. And the heart is in the middle of it because Proverbs tells us, under inspiration, Solomon said, all the issues of life come out of the heart. So your heart is the biggest factor that we're exercising for, and the circulation. You can see these red blood cells here in this picture here of this guy running, and we have a cellular energy crisis. What do you think that is? We have a crisis within the body. We're living from the wrong fuel. And what happens, people are burning their metabolism most of the time from carbohydrates and from the glycogen, which is the fuel for fast twitch fibers here. We don't want to use fast twitch fibers, particularly 2/3 of the time we want to be spending in the slow twitch fibers. So 66% of your training time or exercise time should be for the heart. Let me give you an example. I went to a gym. They wanted me to speak at this gym, and it was a really heavy weightlifting clientele at this gym. And they were banging the weights, and they were picking up these big weights, and they were throwing them down. Then I sat down and said, you're doing a challenge. The challenge is you want to see who can lose the most fat weight. So your boss here at the gym wanted me to come over and tell you that what's most important is that you don't forget about the fibers of the heart and the slow twitch fibers of the body, because you want to build mitochondria. So I told them all the same thing. We did their body percent fat in the lab, and we could tell what their percentage to fat to muscle mass was. Then they set them off on a 12-week challenge where they came back and was retested. I told them all the same thing. I said, those of you that start focusing on the heart will do better, and you will lose the most weight. Well, some of them took it for gospel truth, and others didn't. The name of the gym was M68. And I said, who would name their gym M68? That's really wild. I mean, that's a crazy name for a gym. So I asked my wife, I said, why would you name your gym M68? She said, oh, Micah 6:8. What does the Lord require of you? Wow. I said, wow, that is a perfect example of what God is asking us to do, is to worry about the heart, take care of the fibers. So I was able to witness to them in this gym. And the one who won the challenge took me for gospel truth. He walked every day at lunch and worked his heart at lunchtime, and he won the trip to Hawaii. They were giving away tickets to Hawaii for he and the significant other. And boy, was he surprised with all he did was walk. He added that to his weight training program, and it was pretty important. So our crisis is really in our metabolism. We don't store fitness. We restore it. Every day we go and restore the idea of the body working in its metabolism correctly. We talk about disease. Most metabolic diseases are tied into your metabolism. Hypertension, high blood pressure, diabetes, heart disease, strokes, all the things that we're suffering from are metabolic related. So you want to really focus for your health is concerned on the metabolic health of that program when you exercise. So exercise is not just for athletes. It's not just in athletic terms. There it's not. It's not just to lose weight. Oh, you say, well, you just told me that the person who exercised lost the most weight. Well, let's think about that. How many calories do you burn when you exercise? Well, a little bit more than when you're at rest, but maybe in a course of an hour, 200, maybe 300 calories is really what people burn. And if they're working too hard, they're burning sugar calories, not even burning fat calories. So we're not concerned about burning off how many calories you're burning, but 200, if you wanted to worry about it, you got to burn 3,500 calories to lose 1 pound. Whoa. Now we're discouraged. Now we're thinking, but what's exercise for if it doesn't lose weight? Well, it does. There's a combination of things that have to be, the factors have to be right. And I'm going to tell you about those for it to actually affect your resting metabolism. Exercise for the outward appearance, is that all we're exercising for? No. Where does God look at? He looked at the heart. Remember, he told Samuel, he's not the one I'm picking for the king. Don't look at the outward appearance. And of course, he rejected all the brothers, came clear down to David, and David was going to be the next king, but because he had the right heart. And he was willing to stand up for the Lord. That's why he defeated Goliath for sure. So the Goliaths in our life, we got to make sure and let God lead us to how we should be doing those. Okay, do we do it for the burn? Most people say you got to go and you got to feel the burn, you got to exercise hard, you got to feel fatigue, you got to feel the sore muscles. That's usually telling you that you're overtraining. That's not what you're after. Or what about the 3 times a week? Should we be exercising more than 3 times a week? Most people say, well, if you get at least 3, that's at least something. Well, that's a maintenance program. We maintain our fitness on 3 times a week. We actually 4 times a week start to build it. 5 times a week, we start to enjoy it. 6 times a week, we start to employ it. 7 days a week, guess what? They have research that shows that you actually destroy fitness if you exercise 7 days a week. Muscles need rest. The body needs rest. Rest, God designed rest a day a week. So that's an important parameter of exercises. Don't feel like you have to go every day, although at this sweet spot level that I'm going to show you that you should be exercising at, guess what? That sweet spot level can be done daily because it's not overdoing the system. It's keeping you right at that sweet spot where your body likes it and generates, we call it mitochondrial regeneration. That's what we want. That's the key to exercise, is to get more mitochondria per muscle cell unit. The more you have, the more aerobic you are, the healthier you are, the easier it is to do exercise, the better we feel, and we don't feel like we have to eat to replace our energy. In fact, I told Ben when Ben was in the lab, I said, Ben, you want to breathe your exercise, or you don't want to eat your exercise, you want to breathe your exercise. Well, how do you do that? How do you breathe your energy? Well, as you get better at using fuel and using energy, you actually are getting energy right out of your breath, right out of your, that's why we measure your breath in the lab. And we use that to set exercise levels. Okay, so the moto, we look down here, training factors that are the factors that compose the right dose of exercise. Number 1 is the mode. Everybody thinks that if you're walking or running or on a stair step or you're swimming or what else? Anything else, any piece of equipment that you're still doing aerobic exercise. But what makes it aerobic? That's the second factor in there. That's the intensity of the activity, the sweet spot of exercise. And I left blanks there so you can actually put that in there. You have a calculator online that I have that you can actually go and calculate out what that sweet spot should be. So the mode is really up to you. Doesn't matter what you do. Walking is an easy one. Swimming, we can drop your intensity by 10 beats because of the gravity of blood flowing back to the heart is greater when you're in the supine position. And so you're actually working harder. So you can drop that intensity down even 10 beats or so than what you're doing when you're walking. Okay. Frequency, like we said before, 5 to 6 days a week. Think metabolism setting daily and continuance versus maintenance. That'll help change your attitude. We want to change our and repurpose our idea of physical activity. We don't want to go with the culture. We want to be against that counter. We want to be counterculture to what the popular belief is. It's not harder, it's smarter. And we exercise with reason. And then the last one, last parameter there, is duration of the exercise. Training time should start with about 15 or 20 minutes, depending on if you've been doing anything. And you can build on that. Don't add more than about 5 minutes per week to that. And we say 45 minutes up to an hour. Doesn't all have to be at one time. You can break it into doses throughout the day. It's all cumulative. That's the neat thing about exercise is it's like medicine. You can, whenever you take it, it adds on to the accumulation that you get, the effect, what we call training effect of that daily activity that you're being active. So if you don't have enough time to do it all at once, do 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there. We eat 3 times a day. Maybe we should exercise 3 times a day. In fact, when I was at the Lifestyle Center of America in Oklahoma with Dr. Nedley and Dr. DeRose and all these lifestyle physicians, we had them exercising 4 times a day, 30 minutes at a time, but we had them also doing what we call IT work, where they would exercise and rest and mix it all together. That's a good way to go about it too. Who said you had to keep going just straight without taking a rest? Resting is as important as exercise. It's the balanced exercise. You have a question, anybody? Don't want to breeze on here if someone has a question. Ben is monitoring that, so he'll let me know if there's a question. Now, I've set it up there, the intensity. We probably should look here at where you go to find that intensity. I have a calculator down here, right there, smarter.com. Don't forget to put the heart in the middle of it, smarter, SMHEARTER, and to com. And I got that web page because I misspelled smarter and nobody had it. And it was easy to get. And smarter.com, you can go and put in your parameters and you can actually get the sweet spot heart rate that you need. So you can put that up there and where that belongs in that intensity. Another operative of metabolic efficiency is we want to be slightly negative energy balance if particularly we want to use the calories from the stored area. If you're positive energy balance, if you're eating more than your body needs, then what will happen is the body will use the food. And that brings up one more good thing. Be sure you don't exercise right after you've eaten, exercise before you eat. So your body says, I don't need the food for my energy. I can actually exercise with stored energy. And we all have plenty of stored energy in our system. And we look at that in the lab. We look at the body composition because we show how much improvement you make when you come back and repeat that lab test. There are 3 lab tests we do: laying down, metabolism, and resting metabolism. Then we go to the body composition, and then we also do what we call an exercise threshold of where that sweet spot is. Okay, and there I have a formula for that second operative to find out how many calories you should be eating. And if you look down here at the correct intake that you should have, you can, for men, you can add to this formula, you can add +5. For women, you can subtract 161 calories. And it's been researched, Mifflin St. Jor equation that tells you how many calories that it takes to run your body, 10 times your weight in kilograms. How do you know your weight in kilograms? You take your weight times 2.2. That will tell you kilograms, or actually divide by 2.2. And then if you want to find out what your height is in centimeters, you take your inches times 2.54 and find out what that is. Then you can use them in this formula and find out how many, what we call resting energy expenditure for the day is. How many calories does your body use? If you want to normalize your weight, you can drop off 1 to 200 calories usually off of that and lose a pound to 2 a week. And that's plenty fast enough to lose weight. You don't have to lose it fast, and your body will use it from the right stored area. Okay, now, one other thing that I want to tell you, particularly, and I'll let you ask some questions. That's pretty simple, that MIFT formula, MIFD. You can actually not be confused about it, or MIFT, we call that confusion. We can use that acronym to mode, intensity, frequency, and duration of the exercise. And then we can get the right amount of calories it takes to run our body. And then the third operative is drinking water. We have people coming to the lab that are dehydrated and find out that their body's living on about 400 calories. Well, nobody's living on 400 calories. That's not enough calories to live on. So we know there's something wrong, and then we tell them to go home, and we say, go home and go home for a week, come back, and we'll repeat the metabolism test because your body's not metabolizing efficiently because of dehydration. So there it is. There's the third operative. And but before I get to the end of all the research that I'm doing and looking at this, I bet you, I'm not a betting man, but I bet you there are all the 6 points of health that we as a church teach. The New Start, nutrition, exercise, water, they're the first ones we've been talking about. And then sunlight. We know that those people having blood pressure issues should be spending a little time out in the sunlight every day. That really helps to curb the blood pressure issues. So outside is very good for, and being out in the forest or on the beach or somewhere where you're getting negative, what we call negative ions, are very good for those blood pressure issues as well. So get outside. Kill 2 birds with 1 stone, get fresh air. That's the next one, of course. We have sunlight. We have being temperate in your lifestyle habits. We have air, being sure you're breathing deeply, getting good breathing, getting good air at night. If you have issues with your breathing and you have needing a CPAP at night, you need to get checked out by your physician because air metabolism is really important for the body. We live on air and we need it all the time. And then your rest, very important. If you're having trouble with rest, there's lots of things to key into. I know Ben in his coaching has some good techniques as to how to get you to where you're resting good. That's very important, rest to the system. And then the T on the end is actually a very important parameter, even though it's not one of the physical parameters, because all those others are physical, but it's the divine part, the trusting in divine power, letting God help heal our illnesses and heal our sicknesses from day to day, and asking him to be our great physician. That's a very important part of this whole process. In fact, I asked somebody one time, if you knock the T off the end, what does that word spell? New star. Oh, but how long do stars live? If we're talking about movie stars, they go in and out really quick. They're a new star for a little bit and then they're gone. So New Start, to give us the holding power to the whole idea of the health message, is trusting in divine power to help you. So don't forget that parameter when you're looking at improving your health. One other thing about I have in here about warm up and cool down exercises, stretching we call them, sometimes flexibility exercises. Bob Anderson is the guru of stretching. He's got many, many books. I put a link there. You can click on that and go to a whole book, and gives you a whole book full of stretching exercises. And there's about 5 main joints: your head and neck, your shoulder joint, your hip, your knee joint, your ankle joint, and all the muscles and parameters between those joints need to be stretched daily to help keep them happy. In fact, we did 2 stretching days or 2 stretching periods a day at the Lifestyle Center. Besides the 4 exercises, we didn't call it necessarily exercise. We just call it preparing our systems. And my major professor from San Diego State, where I took my doctoral work, stopped by one time when I was there at the Lifestyle Center just to visit and see how things were going. He pulled me aside and he said, "You want to know why these people are doing so good with 4 sessions a day? Can you believe how much exercise you're giving them?" He said, "It's the stretching exercises that are making them feel good and keeping their joints and muscles happy." And so we have to take care of the frame that we do all these exercises with. And that's why I mentioned this idea of warming up and cooling down with stretching exercises. Okay, we've taken a quick perusal of the parameters of exercise, the operatives of exercise, what the factors are for to be metabolically efficient. How long do you think it takes? Let me ask this question. I'm going to quit sharing this for a second so I can see you. So I'm going to stop the share. There you are, taking notes. Boy, look at that. That's pretty good. What do you think, how long it takes for you to improve your fitness health? What do you think it takes? How many weeks do you think it takes to see change? Any ideas?
Oh, about a
I'll
month.
say two.
How much?
A
About,
month.
It
I
actually
said
takes,
I
I
said
believe
2 weeks.
it
2 weeks.
takes
I heard 2 weeks.
8
I heard 1 month.
weeks.
What'd you say,
It
Dr. Meyer?
takes 8 weeks. It
8
takes 8
weeks.
weeks for the body to actually physiologically change. How long do you think it takes to lose? If you just quit exercising, you're in a good shape, and all of a sudden you quit. How many weeks do you think it takes to lose it?
8 weeks.
Well, in 2 weeks,
Two.
we lose a
That's my guess.
third. We lose a third. So that means in 6 weeks, we lose about everything we got that we added up. So exercise, remember, we don't store it. We restore it daily. You have to keep after it. It's not anything that you can live on your laurels. You can't say, "Well, I've done it today. I'll be okay for a couple days." Well, when people tell me they exercise 3 times a week, you know what my comeback is? How many times a week do you eat? that usually that usually takes care of the question about how many times a week you should be exercising, because we eat every day, and metabolism is keyed into our activity and what we eat. One more little tip about diabetes. Those of you that are suffering a little bit from diabetes or have pre-diabetes, have problems with blood sugars, we know that 80% of all the diabetes is type 2, and type 2 diabetes is caused by inactivity and eating processed foods. We eat a lot of processed food. Everything comes out of a can, everything comes in a box. Processed foods, you need to eat natural foods, whole foods, because that shuts down the cells, so the cells don't know how to know what to do with the sugar in the cell because of that processing of that food. And so I had a physician that I worked with in California that would say, "I can cure your diabetes if you just do these 2 things. Don't eat processed food, and don't make sure you exercise every day. Don't just sit around. And guess what? You can cure your diabetes in 80% of the cases The ones that are not making insulin, type 1 diabetes, need a little help other than that, but they do a lot better if you're eating whole foods for sure. And
Got a
um,
question.
okay.
I'm a truck driver, possibly drive like 10 hours a day. How much
Yep.
walking do I need to do within that day?
Boy, do you drive 10 straight without stopping?
No, I had to pick up loads, deliver loads. I
Well,
say
that's
I
good.
drive like 4 hours at a time and then stop and then drive like two and stuff.
Well,
But it
that's
all,
good. That
yeah,
I would be sure that when you're stopping to just take a 10-minute walk or something, make sure that you're walking and accumulating that activity in the body at that sweet spot. I know it's pretty hard when you're driving all the time like that. That's pretty hard in the system. That's the sittings disease, when we sit too much. So you got to be careful about how your body metabolizes because the body is set up for being active and
right.
just being static, all that's pretty hard on the system. So
Okay.
I would say when you stop, make sure that you're getting out and you're moving around, you're getting some exercise and helping that system out. And once you find your sweet spot, you can do it at that.
We have a question in the chat. The
Okay.
question says, do these guidelines work even though one is going through perimenopause? It has seemed to be impossible to get rid of extra weight in this phase.
Yeah. Now let's go back to my handout here. I'm gonna share that handout again because I want to show you something on the handout. Okay. So we know the parameters, we know the factors that are going to really help us using the right kind of activity. Leg activity is usually better than arm activity. And that's why we like walking and we like bicycling and we like those kind of things. Swimming is not so much. We try to keep heart patients away from that. Stepping is pretty hard on the system. You're picking your weight up over a step. I would use a very short step if you're going to use stepping as your measure. A lot of people like to step, and it's a stationary thing. And that to the truck driver who posed that question, he could keep a step right in his truck and pull it out and step up and down the step, and it would be very good for him. Make sure he's controlling his heart rate there at the right spot because it adds 33% more work when you step up on a step. So let's say your prescription calls for about 50% of your capacity workout. We can actually calculate out, and I can help anybody that wants to be helped at some point by just contacting me. I have my contact information on this handout. And you contact me and I'll show you how to figure out what percentage of your total capacity are you actually working at. And when you know that percentage, let's say you're working at 50%, and all of a sudden you're staying down on a step, that's 80%. That's way too high for most people to keep it cardio. In fact, athletes are really out of the cardio level sometimes at 80%. So um, that's why slow stepping on a on a very low step, not more than 2 to 4 inches at the most. 2 inches usually is a good step because you have to lift that body up, and it's very strengthening for the quadricep of the legs, the front leg muscles. Stepping is a good exercise for that. But we have to be careful. Water walking is one of the best because when you're walking in the water, you are aiding circulation. And that's the key to this menopausal question that we just had is circulatory system has to be involved. We sometimes go out of that and go too hard. And then when we do that, it's no longer really cardio or aerobic work. It's actually anaerobic work. That doesn't help. The parameters I'm giving you is to be at the right level will actually, in fact, make a difference. Even in menopausal cases, will actually work. And then frequency, make sure that you start out with only about 3 days a week, every other day, and then you add a day per week till you get up to 5 or 6. Add things slowly. The body has to get used to my physiology teacher used to say, exercise is a stress on your body. So your body has to learn how to actually, in fact, to be able to handle that stress.
I have a
So
quick
physical
question. Oh,
stress.
I'm sorry.
Okay, Doreen.
About the topic at hand. So
Okay.
what if you already started at 5 days per week? Do you recommend going down now that we know better to 3 and then working
No,
our
if
way
you're
back up
exercising
properly?
5 days a week and your body is handling it, yes, you can go ahead and continue on with that. But I think the biggest parameter here, like I'm talking about, is intensity. Make sure your intensity's at the calculated rate. Use the online calculator to know exactly what heart rate you should be working at. One other thing I say here, if you're on medications that are controlling the heart, we don't use heart rate as your method. We use the talk test. So if you can still talk in phrases without gasping for air, and you can carry on a conversation with your exercise buddy, you should all have an exercise buddy because exercising together, everybody is more faithful to their program they've found. So make sure you do that. But when you're taking medications, heart rate no longer is a good monitoring guide. Someday I'll have a breath guide where you actually breathe into a tube and it tells you if you're at the right spot. So I'm working on that. But right now, heart rate is the best method we have. But the talk test is a very good method to know that you're not overdoing and you're staying at the right level. Um, and usually most of you won't be much over about 40% or so of your capacity when you start out. And it should be pretty comfortable. Exercise does not have to be harder, it has to be smarter. And look at that for sure at that right there, that's smarter.com, and find out what your heart rate intensity should be. And that should keep you at the right spot. Did that help answer some of those questions? Everybody's got it.
There was another question that was put in the chat. Is it safe to lose 2 pounds per week?
You can lose 2 pounds a week. We like to do it under the supervision of a physician when you start losing too much weight. You remember the show Biggest Loser? Remember when they had them losing all that weight? The one who lost the most weight won the prize.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know how they did that? They didn't feed them. They starved them to death, and then they also worked them to death. And those two together, they lost muscle mass. And muscle mass is very heavy. It's 3 to 4 times as heavy as fat mass. And so on the scale, it looks really good. But when you go back to eating, go back to regular life, all that comes back. And you never keep that weight off. My sons were videographers on that show down in Hollywood. And now they run the ministry called Little Light Ministries. And they said, Dad, we were working for the devil down in Hollywood. And I said, yeah, I've been praying about that. And they said, well, we're gonna work for the Lord. We're gonna talk out against the perils of the Hollywood industry. And that's their ministry. If you want to check them out, Little Light Ministries. Scott Meyer, my second son down. It started out with both Tom and Scott, my two older boys, and they're all in ministries. My third son down is in a Gideon ministry where they go around to all these catastrophic events and help people who have been in tornadoes or tsunamis or some of these bad things that are happening, and they're just getting worse in our world. And as time of the end comes, they're going to get worse. And my son says, man, he's got so much call for his team to go and help out. It's amazing. But you can check out his Gideon Ministries. His name is Brockmeyer. And then my oldest son is at a little school in Utah, and he's there helping out, teaching them how to grow food, the Ellen White method. There's a real method to how you grow your food, the nutrition of it, and that sort of thing. Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, I got another question.
Okay.
So when you say exercise, is that literally walking, just a plain walk, or is just running like in a gym or on the outside, or what type of exercise are you really talking
I'm
about?
glad you asked. I'm glad you asked that question. That's a good question. And that deals with the mode of activity. Everybody puts exercise into one happy basket. Any exercise is all the same. It's not all the same. In fact, rhythmic movements of the muscles is important, like walking. Something that we're used to that our bodies can tolerate and handle. So that's good. If it can't, like I said, water walking in the water is your 1/6 your weight. So it's really easy on joints and that sort of thing. So walking in the water is good too in the shallow end of a pool. Most people don't have access to a pool, so can't all do that, but walking is good. If you can't walk, a stationary bicycle would be good because you're sitting on a seat and you're just moving your legs. In your case, it'd be good for you since you're pretty stagnant a lot of times. I would use that stepping method. I'd get out and I'd take that step and I'd just step up and down and listen to, your podcasts and some of the things that you do to help pass the time because you're all by yourself a lot. So you can join these book clubs like this and learn a lot about the difference. But exercise, when we talk about exercise, the word's really been co-opted. It means everything, all kinds of exercise. But the kind of exercise that's going to help you are the circulatory exercise that helps circulate that blood through the system. And that's where you should spend 2/3 of your time doing that. We don't need to worry about the outward appearance so much, all the weightlifting and all that. Sure, that's fun, but that's not using the right kind of musculature for your health. Now it's helping your physical to have strength, and that might help you prevent injury, depending on your job and that sort of thing. But you need the heart activities, the circulatory activities that work the slow twitch fibers and stay at that intensity that your calculator, when you calculate that you should be at. And at first you'll feel, well, this is nothing. It's not doing anything for me. It's too low. In fact, Ben told me that when he looked on the calculator, he says, that's too low. I'm usually way above that. And when we tested his body in the lab, we found out was almost exactly to the same heartbeat that the calculator had told him. And that's where he gets the most benefit from that exercise. So it's not harder, it's smarter that's going to make the difference. And consistency, doing it from day in and day out. Good question. What kind of exercise?
Quick question, if I may.
Yep,
I see that you see optimally it's between 50 and 60 minutes a day, but that can be compoundively, like 20 minutes, 20 minutes, 20 minutes, that sort of thing.
sure. You don't have to do it all at one time. You can break it into doses throughout the day. Um, Actually, 45 minutes is a good time. The American College of Sports Medicine said 30 minutes is enough time. It's on the light side. I'd be careful of 30 minutes, but I would exercise 45 minutes a day at least. And I could break that into 2 periods of 20 and 25, or, maybe 15, 15, and 15, or like that.
Okay. In my second, I put it in the chat, but I use a CPAP machine,
Yeah,
and I find I get great sleep with it.
that's
But
good.
is that hindering me? Because
No, that's helping.
it's
No,
helping.
that's helping you. That's helping you. Now, do you use that during your exercise as well?
Uh, no,
Just during the sleep.
just
Yeah.
during my sleep. Yeah.
Yeah. We had a guy who came to the lifestyle center who actually wore oxygen while he exercised because his body was so bad at using oxygen. And he came back a year later and I didn't even recognize him because he'd lost weight and he wasn't using the oxygen anymore. And he said, well, I just did what you said. You got to be out there and be active. And boy, it changed his life. And so activity has that ability to do that. But I would highly recommend if you have, you know, sleep apnea or anything like that, that you, with your physician, get that taken care of because sleep and rest is really important for all this so that your body learns to use the right fuel. When we're fatigued or tired all the time, the body doesn't want to wait just to breathe the air to make the fuel. It says, hey, just dump in sugar. And so it uses the wrong fuel. And we live from that. I've got people that come in the lab that lay down, Ben, like you did when you laid down, and they're living from their carbs 100%, aren't even using any fat fuel. And so they can't figure out why they can't lose weight and they can't because remember, 75% of the time is when your body burns the calories off, is when you're at rest. So you got to really be efficient at using those calories.
We have another question in the chat. What is a circular exercise?
Okay, circular meaning circulation probably is what they're referring to. Have them speak up and give me a little more detail of what they're talking about. Circular exercise. It
All
may
right,
be referring to circulation.
Veronica, you want to give more detail, please?
She's muted.
She unmute. Oh, she's still muted.
You mentioned it, so I was trying to know what exercise is that I
Circulation.
heard circular, but whatever exercise you were saying, can you give an example?
Okay, circulation exercises where you're circulating the oxygen through your body in the slow twitch fibers. So it's not very hard, but it helps to get the blood flowing in those muscles because they're the ones using the oxygen. Did you know that when you start to exercise, 80% of all your blood flow goes to those working muscles because they need the oxygen? You only have 20% left for two important organs in the body. What are they? The brain and the heart. They still need oxygen to work on. In fact, the heart only gets its oxygen in between the beats when it isn't working. So think about that. If you're exercising too hard, there's not enough time for that heart to rest and get the blood flow into the heart. So sometimes it's not good to be exercising too high because the narrowing of arteries and things that supply the heart. So circulation exercise is exercises that use oxygen in the body for the fuel. And that's done through the mitochondria. And if you go too hard, it's not done through the mitochondria. It's just done by dumping in sugar in the stored energy in the muscles of what we call glycogen. Now, there's nothing wrong with the body doing those. We need those kinds of things, but that's the spark of the system, not the endurance of the system. So circulation exercise requires the body to be at the right intensity. That's really key. Because you can make any exercise non-circulatory exercises. Like let's say when you hit the ball and run to first base, you don't even have to breathe. You're not using air to do that metabolism. You're using sugar. And so, in fact, most runners, they'll hold their breath all the way to first base. They won't even breathe because they don't want to waste energy breathing. So they put all that energy into the muscles using sugar or glycogen. So circulatory exercises requires your body to use the circulation of the blood. And here's something that's really interesting. You have thousands and thousands of miles of arteries in the body. And that's why the body, it's like a tree where the body circulates and gets the blood to all parts of the body. Thousands of miles. And those arteries have muscle in the arterial walls. Wow, think of that. Those are all pumping thousands and thousands of miles, pumping the blood around in the circulation. Boy, that's magnificent. What a neat system when you think of that. It's not just the heart pumping, it's the circulation of those arteries, which are getting that blood to flow around. And the veins, when the blood comes back, has one-way valves in it. So when you heart pumps, it pumps it to the next level, and then those flap shut so the blood won't go backwards. Wow. Boy, we really need physiology of the body to work correctly for us to get the benefit that you need out of activity. And that's why I'm giving you some of these parameters. There's a lot of research and a lot of ideas behind that. Please address deep breathing and then proper breathing during exercise. And that's from someone who asked that question. I saw it there pop up on my deal. Deep breathing exercises. In fact, there's you can get an instrument. I saw it advertised on TV not too long ago. That helps. It's called a flutter valve that helps break up the mucous membranes in the lungs so the lungs can get more oxygen and to deliver more oxygen. Usually the limiting factor is not the lungs. That's usually not the problem. Even if people have COPD or have some chronic lung disease or smoking or those kind of things, it's usually not the problem. It's the cellular level of circulation. We call it cellular respiration. It's the respiration of the air in the cells that are more of the problem because we're not acting, we're not training that. So that's why that's important to be sure and do circulatory exercises. And the lungs will improve as you exercise because they work off of mechanics. So when your lung rib cage changes, it changes the configuration of the lungs, and the air either has to flow in or out, depending on the what we call pressure gradient difference between the outside air and the inside air. We're not blowing or sucking or air in and out. We're changing the level of that configuration so the lungs can allow the air to go in and out. So what helps that is to have good lung capacity so the air can move good in the lungs, and any obstructive disease in the lungs can hamper that. So good lung breathing, deep breathing exercises, using those flutter valves, or even just deep breathing.
Okay, another question was
We
asked
get
in
to
the,
shallow breathing a lot. Will you say that again, Ben?
another question was asked in the chat whether calf raises would be considered circulatory exercises.
Oh, that's a good question. I love that question. Because when you're raising up on your calves, what's doing the work? The muscle or the fat? Well, obviously we know it's the muscle. Okay. So the muscle's lifting you up and letting you down. Most people like to exercise body parts that they're worried about getting thinner legs. That doesn't necessarily give you thinner legs because the fat is just happens to be the weight is stored in that what we call depot at that area of the calves of the legs. So people are worried about that. They want to get rid of that. So I say when you want to lose weight in the calves, then the best way to do that would be to move the legs, but it doesn't make a difference where you're exercising, where you're going to lose weight. So lifting calves is not circulatory, it's actually muscle work. It's strengthening works of that calf muscle. When we actually have to motate and move, then the body says, oh, I need to move blood around to feed oxygen to these working muscles. And so we get strength exercises mixed up with with cardiovascular exercise because of the muscles working in those areas. And they may be demanding oxygen. If you keep the demand down in the right sweet spot area, then yes, calf raises would be circulatory, but usually it can't wait to breathe the air and give the energy to that calf. So it just dumps in sugar to do the work. That's why it's considered a strength exercise. Good question. You're thinking about it. See, we get confused about what are all the types of exercises, and that's what Clifford was asking as he was driving along there in his truck. You know, what are we talking about when we talk about exercise? What's really going to help? It's hard for us to really get our minds around and say, just walking? That's all I need? That's going to really make a difference in your whole health because of the circulation of oxygen. Our life is in our blood. In fact, when they want to find out what condition you're in and what problems you have, they take your blood and analyze it. Your life is in your blood, and that blood has to have good constituents, good parameters on it, and they can find out what disease you have just from looking at the blood. So we want to circulate that blood. Because remember, Solomon said all the issues of life come out of the heart because the heart is what he's talking about circulating that blood. Good questions. Any other questions?
What would you categorize pickleball?
Pickleball, now that's a sport, and I'm glad you brought that up. Anytime we have a sport, my physiology teacher said, don't do sports to keep in shape. Do exercise training to keep in shape to do your sports. Because most sports are competitive. Are you a good player? Isha,
Yes,
are you a good
yes,
player? Okay, so do
mhm,
you win a lot? Do you
yes.
stand around and watch the other side, or do you run around and try and get the ball and beat them?
I get ran around a lot.
Yeah. And so it's probably above your sweet spot. So it's probably a lot of anaerobic work. So nothing wrong with sports and having fun with sports, but don't use it to keep in shape. First, do activities to keep you in shape, then to do your sports. You need good stretching exercises. That you need good strengthening exercises for that, so you don't injure yourself. When you're doing that. Usually in sports, we say it's not are you going to get injured? It's when are you going to get injured? Because a lot of people, because they're playing competitively, it's easy for them to injure themselves because they want to get that point, and so it's pretty competitive. So use that for fun, but and usually you don't do that every day. Do you play pickleball every day?
No.
Yeah. Remember, your walking could really adjunct that. And so walk every day will help that pickleball. You'll do better and you'll do it more from the aerobic system because you're strengthening that system to use that fuel. And so eventually we could say, yeah, it's got some aerobic benefits, but probably at this point, I doubt it. We had a guy come in the lab and he had a video that said aerobic weight training. So we said, oh, let's check it out. So we hooked him up to the analyzer, and all during his routine, he was never aerobic. He was always anaerobic. There was no air being used to do that exercise. He said, well, that's false advertising. I said, well, that's the way life goes when it goes to exercise. A lot of people give you false impressions of what's good for you and what's not good for you. And usually it's not harder, it's smarter that's good for you. Good question. Any other questions?
Looks like that's it.
Looks like that's it. Okay.
I guess the question now.
I have a question.
Okay,
Um,
go ahead, Luana.
this is Veronica.
Oh, Veronica, excuse me.
When Brother Ben explained, told us about you coming at the kickoff meeting, I think that was when he mentioned that it might be done in parts. And I just want to tell you, we look forward to the other parts because I know there must be more than just this. There must be something we can do wrong that you don't want to overwhelm us with and you want to tell us later so that we're not
We're doing, yeah. Okay,
yeah,
Veronica, very
just an
good
overload.
question. Here's how I'll handle that. On your assignment, on that little handout that you'll have access to, I'll share that with, I'll send that to Ben and he can share it along so you can print it out and have that handout. On that handout are all the calculations and parameters and things you need to figure out. If you have trouble in it, you can ask, you can text me or send me an email. Smarter@gmail.com is my email address. Same was spelled the same way, SMHEARTER.com. So you can send me questions and things, and I can help you figure things out, or we can get together and talk over the phone, or whichever which is easiest. We can even have another little Zoom session, a private little Zoom session. I have access to the Zoom here at the school, and they don't charge me anything for it. And so I've got plenty of time I can spend with you if I need to help you get straight on what you're doing and how you're going about it. But once you get that all figured out, then I hopefully Ben will have me back to your book club, and I will be glad to again shore up ideas and things that people are coming with because you can't expect to learn it like you said all in one little shot. I usually will do a shot, and then I will usually have at least 4 follow-ups to it to explain each area and to how to calculate it and figure it out and those kinds of things. So don't feel bad. It's like any new language, It takes time to understand, what we're talking about when we talk about the right kind of exercises, the right intensity, um, making sure that you get corrected on your intake, get that corrected, right? Make sure you're drinking half your weight in ounces a day in your water, and 15 every 15 minutes of exercise, 8 ounces of water. Lots of water. The body needs water to really do the metabolism. So those kinds of things are really important to your success. We want you to be successful in your exercise and not be just spinning your wheels or wasting your time. If you're going to do it, you want it to be get the best bang for your buck. That's what my dad used to say. Make sure you get the best bang for your buck when you buy things and when you look for things, because that's what you want, is something that really works.
Do
So
you do you mind repeating that? You said 8 ounces of water after how many minutes of
yeah,
exercise?
that's on the handout, so you'll have it, but it's 8 ounces of water every 15 minutes of exercise. And then the rest of the time, half your weight in ounces you got to drink a day. So take your weight and divide it by 2. You weigh 100 pounds, you got to drink 50 ounces of water a day. If you weigh 200 pounds, you got to drink 100 ounces of water a day. Those just general rules that we have in physiology.
A question was posted. Is someone with knee issues, how do they get circulation happening if simple walking is painful?
Okay. My physiology teacher used to always say, if it hurts, don't do it. Okay. And I agree with that. If it's hurting your knee, don't walking is not your thing, or go to water walking. Try it in the water. You may have too much weight on that knee and it's causing it problems, and all of a sudden in the water feels fine. So there's nothing wrong with water walking too. Join a YMCA or something, or join a pool where you can walk daily in the shallow end. That would be one way. Or I would say look online and find a stationary bike. There's one, every garage sale, there's one for sale. Why? Because people use them as hangers in the bedroom. That's how they hang their clothes up in the bedroom. And they're not using them, so they want to get rid of them. So you can get a pretty good price. You ought to be able to find a good used stationary bike. The brand that I like is Schwinn, called Aerodyne, and it has a fan. So when you ride it, that fan circulates the air around you. And boy, that's really nice to have the fan blowing air on you while you're exercising, keeping you cool. And then usually you probably shouldn't pay more than a couple $100 at the most for a used bike. You probably find one for maybe $100, maybe even less at some garage sale. And so I'd keep my eyes open in a garage sale, and I would sit on a seat and just move that knee. You get circulation for moving the knee, but not putting trauma or weight on the knee. Usually that's the problem. And if it's still bothered by circulating the knee moving, then be sure you check it out with your orthopedic physician, because they may do some correction things to make sure that your knees are correct and don't have problems that they need attention. So, but you want to be sure. And still, the excuse is because I've got a bad knee, I don't have to exercise. What do you think the heart is saying when you have a bad knee? It's saying, well, I don't care if you have a bad knee. I still need exercise through the heart. I still need blood flow. I still need work. So it's using your mechanical system is failing the rest of the system. So you're going to have to find something you can do that doesn't bother that knee. And usually taking it in doses, or even taking it in intermittent, where you exercise and then rest, exercise and then rest, is sometimes where you can tolerate it. And not doing all your exercise at one time, doing it different bouts throughout the day. Just do it for 5 or 10 minutes at a time, and then add another one on later. That's the body likes tolerances to activity that are not overdone. We have to be careful about overdoing the system.
What would you say about the rebounder? I heard that that's good. What's your position on the rebounder?
A rebounder is like any other piece of equipment. It's moving the body, it's moving muscles. The claim to fame on a rebounder is it's helping the lymph system because you're, helping to move the lymph around. Um, when you talk about mode of exercise, it's really your preference. If you can tolerate it and it doesn't bother you. Sometimes a rebounder can even bother hips joints and knee joints and things like that, even though it's taking up most of the shock absorption of that bounce. We can overdo it a little bit, but if it's not bothering you, go ahead and do it. I think it's fine. Um, it's not for sure hurting you. My physiology said muscles are made for movement, so move them. Make those joints and things move. That's why I'm not a big proponent of isometric weight training, where people just hold stiff and hard and steady, and they don't move the muscle. Muscles are made for movement, so strength training even should be a movement type thing. Here's another question. Oh, Ben, coach, he put one in there for a bicycle already for sale. Was that one for sale, Ben?
Yes, it was.
Man,
It was
nice.
the Aerodyne that you mentioned, new 1,000 or more.
Oh yeah,
Some
they're
used
pretty
around
expensive new.
99. From 99 on up to five, six or 700, depending on the condition and how
Yeah,
proud the individual is of it. So yeah,
yeah,
you can get them used at pretty decent prices.
yeah. I would get it used. And if you find some tinkerer that's like a bike guy that likes to tinker with bikes and stuff, if there's anything wrong with it, he can tune it up and make it run right and that kind of thing.
I got a bike that I bought off Amazon, and it has the things that while you pedaling, you can stretch.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
a
some
rowing.
like this, but I have the ones that stretches.
Yeah. So
When
that's
I
doing. Remember, you're doing the exercise just to move muscles at the right intensity. So if moving all those muscles is too high intensity, slow it all down. Get into that sweet spot. That's what's important. Now you're doing a little strength training along with that because when you're pulling on that, it's like you're doing pull-ups and that sort of thing, and that's strengthening muscles. But remember all that. You got to still watch the pulse rate that you don't overdo for the system. That's an important thing. If it feels good, stretching and strengthening and that kind of thing, you can get away with it. But if it's bothering stuff, be careful.
well, no,
Use.
what I do, I just do it until uh, I strain myself, but I also have a meter where I check my pulse rate and all of that. So basically, I go by how I feel.
Let's see. Alfred Hunt. Okay, Alfred. If you ever need any help with anything, don't hesitate to reach out.
I think for a young man, Alfred is doing okay. I haven't seen him
Yeah,
in some years other than virtually, but for a young person that's peaking at the age of 80, he's doing okay.
he's doing pretty good. Yeah, he's keeping active. It looks like he doesn't look 80.
He's knocking on the door. He's not there yet, but he's knocking on that door.
I I was going to ask Ben if he was your brother or something.
We've been accused of that on occasion.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, so Harold, really appreciate the presentation. And going back to a question that Veronica asked, and that was multiple presentations. And this was going back to a comment that Harold mentioned to me, how he goes to churches occasionally and he'll travel there in his camper and stay the weekend at the church, and he'll present the entire weekend, in essence, this concept. And I would assume helping people calculate their sweet spot and
Yeah.
identifying the correct caloric value. But all of those details are on that handout that I posted earlier in the week or maybe even over the weekend. And what we can do as a follow-up, if you all are interested, is kind of walk through it. If you haven't figured out how to do it yet, we can walk through that sheet to help each of you figure out what your sweet spot is. Your water intake should be pretty easy. And your caloric value is just a calculation. And that information is all on the sheet. But if y'all want to work through it together as a group, I'll be happy to do it.
That's good. Good, Ben. That'll really help a lot of people probably.
All
I'll
right.
I'll send you this latest update one that we used today.
Okay.
It's updated from the one that I even gave you at LifeMed.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it's
I'll
got,
post it.
yeah, you can post it and they can have that one.
Well, guys,
I,
we appreciate everybody for coming out and absorbing this information. My prayer is that it will help. The originally this was for our exercise accountability group, recognizing that some of us might want to drop a pound or two, or at least be smart in our exercise, making sure that we are using the right source of energy. So with that said, we thank you, Dr. Meyer, for coming and presenting. And his contact information is in the handout. So if you have specific questions that you'd like to ask him, feel free. And we'd like to get someone to offer, maybe Charles, if you would, offer closing prayer for us, sir.
Dear Heavenly Father, I want to thank you for allowing us to gather. May the information that we take may not just be stored in our heads. May we take it to heart, and we use it for the remainder of the time that you wish for us to have. Bless us as we go about our daily dues, and we give you thanks for the presenter for tonight. Amen.
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 All right, I'm going to stop recording.
Good luck to y'all.
Thank you.